And here he is. Richard, a very good morning to you.
A very good morning to you. I'm quite sure Linda is spot on, Mr. Graham.
That's very kind. Now, you've tweeted out this morning the front page of the Daily Telegraph saying this is my favourite newspaper headline ever. Nigel Farage was able to announce last night on the debate with the six other deadly sins, or whatever they are, that you're now the official opposition. So, what does it all mean?
Well, look, the reality is that we're going up in the polls. The Conservative Party are sinking in the polls. And I describe YouGov as possibly the Rolls-Royce of pollsters. They've constantly had us somewhat higher than many of the other pollsters who are now scrabbling to catch up as they realise that the momentum is with us. It's remarkable. And campaigning where I'm campaigning and stories I'm hearing from all over the country, there is something happening out there. It's quite remarkable. It's a movement. And Nigel's described it as a people's revolt, a peaceful revolt. But people are looking around, they're saying, what else is out there? And they're saying, oh, thank heavens there's someone with some common sense who's going to say, right, this is how you make work pay, how you get people off benefits. This is how you reform our healthcare to get rid of waiting lists. And this is how you freeze immigration to create some wage growth, to ease the pressure on housing and public services. And this is how you try and make our streets safe again. These are the policies that people talk about, not some of the other nonsense that the main parties sort of waffle on about.
Well, I mean, the Labour manifesto was unearthed yesterday. You guys are going to produce not a manifesto, but some kind of contract, which we'll talk about a bit more in a minute. But people are saying about Labour today, the truth about their manifesto is what's not in it is more important than what's in it.
Well, what we hear from think tanks that have examined it is that there are tens of billions, I think about just under 10 billion of tax rises that is baked into that Labour manifesto, even though, as you say, it's not actually specifically mentioned. And that's what we're used to. That's why we're not calling ours a manifesto, because that actually, by definition, stands for broken promises. We're calling ours a contract with you that will be signed on Monday when it's launched, because we come from the world of business. We know how to make things happen, how to fix things. And we want to look people in the eye and say, these are the problems. This is what we've got to do. Some of it may be painful. Some of it might upset a whole bunch of people. But the country's knackered. It's broken. And unless we fix it, unless we make real changes and real big reforms, we're going to go south rather than north. And I think so many people, when they talk to me, they say, thank heavens there's a genuine alternative out there. And that's good for democracy, whether you agree with us or whether you fundamentally disagree with us. That's fine. At least we can have a broad, sensible, grown-up debate about these issues.
I mean, now that you are, if this maintains at the level and say for a week or so you're still the second party, will Nigel Farage be sort of agitating with the media to say, well, surely the next debate should be between me and Keir Starmer?
Oh, absolutely. One can completely see that, because what we've got to do now is to keep pushing hard. We've got a day under 3 weeks to go, and given what we've achieved in the last 3 weeks, anything is possible. And our ambition now is to, in more and more of the polls, equal and then move ahead of the Tories convincingly, and so that people can actually understand that contrary to that old boring refrain, actually the truth now is that a Tory vote is a wasted vote. And if you want change, you've got to vote for it. You've got to vote Reform UK on July the 4th. And I think people are beginning to understand that very clearly.
And do you think that, as we've seen in Europe over the last few days and their elections on Sunday, that there's a growing number of people who are looking at what the sort of the main, we might call them G7 countries, have been doing in terms of what their policies have been? I mean, we're looking at a piece in The Sun by Harry Cole this morning, where almost every single leader of the G7 is, their approval ratings are, -20, -30, -54 in Rishi Sunak's case. Giorgia Meloni is only -10. Because of the sort of the race to net zero, the policy on immigration, and the kinds of things that young people in Europe are now saying, we're not sure we want all this.
What's remarkable, all of that, because fundamentally the role of any government in any country is to improve the quality of lives and prosperity of its citizens. And if you don't do that, don't be surprised if you get fired unceremoniously. And that's what's happening with the Conservatives here. We're getting poorer. The quality of life is reducing. That's the same across most of Europe. I mean, Germany is in deep recession. And it's very simple. You've got the four things. You've got high taxes, big states, mass immigration that no one voted for, and the absurdity of net zero that's killing jobs, killing industries like steel, like automotive here in the UK. It's killing economies, and it's actually killing old people. And it's exactly the same, as I say, in other countries. And it's funny, isn't it? The countries that are taking a more pragmatic approach to reducing harmful emissions in a more timely and affordable fashion, guess what? They're growing much, much faster than we are. We're embarking with net zero upon what I believe is the greatest act of voluntary financial self-harm ever imposed on a nation by its leaders. And it's got to stop.
And critics of the Reform UK organisation say this, right? They say that it's not really a political party, it's a company. It's a financial organisation of which Nigel Farage holds the bulk of the shares. What can you say to people who accuse you of running basically a company rather than a political movement?
I've knocked on tens of thousands of doors and I've never been asked about the structure of the party. People are not interested in that. They're not interested whether it's a not-for-profit company or how many shares it's got. I tell you what they're interested in. Have we got the courage to come up with some common sense policies to stand up for people, to protect our children from being taught ludicrous transgender ideological nonsense in our schools? That's what people want to hear. That's what motivates people. And that's why we're going up in the polls. And what really matters, of course, is the final poll, the actual real election on July the 4th. And from everything we're hearing, the momentum, I'm increasingly convinced, without question, we're going to get more votes cast than the Conservative Party. That's objective number one. So that objective number two is to become the legitimate democratic opposition in the run-up to the 28-29 general election. That's the plan. It's a medium-term plan. Rome's not built in a day, Mike, but we are on the way, and this is great progress.
And in terms of translating it's a 1 point lead at the moment. I mean, but it shouldn't be underestimated since you've come from 7, 8, 9, 10 points behind. What kind of seats number are you looking at? Are you saying that if you're in the lead, there was talk of maybe 4 seats possibly at the possible best? Could it be more than that?
I certainly hope so. The more millions of people who vote for us, then extraordinary things could happen. Look, we don't deny that first past the post is tough for small parties, but also actually for the Conservative Party, it could be brutal on the way down. As every percent they lose, then they will lose dozens and dozens of seats, and quite rightly so. So let's wait and see. We're just saying to people, look, actually a Tory vote is a wasted vote. There's going to be a Labour government, whether we like it or not. Now's the opportunity to express your conviction that actually the country needs reform. The more millions of votes we get, the more seats we get, and the more we change the way this country is going to be run, managed, and the overall sort of debate in British politics. And that's a good thing. This is I think I'm right in saying, Mike, that this is a 1 in 100-year moment where a small party has overtaken one of the main two. I think that's right.
Yeah. And Nigel yesterday said that he might be interested in leading a sort of Conservative merged Reform Party. Was he being serious, or was he just winding them up?
Oh, I think it's always good to wind up the Social Democrats and the Wets who claim to be running a Conservative Party, but actually they're not really. They're running a sort of left-of-centre blancmange, frankly. And look, there's going to have to be a realignment of the right of centre politics in the UK, because at the moment, without excluding ourselves, there is nothing. So change is afoot. The shape of it, what happens, obviously will all sort of shake down post-election. But what is clear is that Reform UK, Nigel, we're going to be right at the centre of all of this. And that's a very, very good thing for this country.
Richard Tice, thank you very much indeed. Richard Tice, the chair of Reform UK.